Welcome to the Shoreline Show. We are back. This is our second episode, and we are so excited to have you here joining us for a second episode. And today, I am going to be interviewing Rennie.
Yeah.
So, are you excited?
Nervous, but excited. Yeah,
you're nervous.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
You should be nervous
I know,
because I have some
tough
really
questions.
pointed questions.
All right.
No.
Well, that's the goal. Is we agreed to our audience that we were going to be organic, real, and bring it hard.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Organic, real, and raw. So, and we said that we wanted to bring our stories out
Absolutely.
to everybody and share what we've struggled with
Yeah.
and how we got to where we are now. So
The funny part about it is, I remember years ago when I first met Stephen Shelley. I would hear him just talk about my story to other people, and I would turn bright red. This is the truth.
It's true.
I would turn bright red, and I'd walk away because I wouldn't want anybody even knowing some of my past. Like, I didn't want anybody knowing because I was on the grind. I was trying to be an entrepreneur, but I wasn't quite there yet, and my past was rough.
Right.
So then I didn't want you telling people that, because this is my new life. That was my past life type of thing.
Right.
But as you mature and grow, you start to realize that it is part of who you are in a good way, right?
yeah, your story is what got you to where you are.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that story is not what you really would have wanted. And a lot of times you know that what got you to where you are isn't going to get you to where you want to go, right?
Absolutely.
And so we can be embarrassed or nervous about other people hearing where we came from, but realizing that sometimes that story that we have, it can really inspire other people as well, and we don't realize that
Right.
in the thick of it.
Yeah, we don't believe that our story matters.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
for sure.
So,
Yeah.
with all that, Rennie,
Let's
why
go.
don't you tell me about your childhood? What was Rennie like as a little boy?
I lived a crazy childhood. So I was born in Michigan, in the Grand Rapids area. But then when we were real young, we moved to Texas. So believe it or not, I grew up in a very Hispanic culture. I think most people would be shocked to hear that, but I mean, we'd have black parties, fiestas. My dad managed restaurants called Casa Rosas and El Chicos, and I remember as a young kid, I'd be flipping tortillas in the back, and that was kind of where we'd go in and out of Mexico a lot. We'd go to Mexico a lot, buying stuff like these little crayons, and like my mom would resell those, and dresses and all sorts of stuff from Mexico. So as a young kid, I feel like that was really bred into me, was that feels very much like home, is the Hispanic culture.
Yeah, which is very family oriented.
Very, very, very. In Texas especially, it was very family oriented. A lot of our friends, it was very tight-knit communities where you spent a lot of time with them. You did life with them. It wasn't just kind of where you're just kind of passing by.
Yeah.
But then our family went through some rough patches where some bad things happened to me when I was a young kid. So then my family moved back here to Michigan, and then due to all that, we then for a little while our life got good again, and then we moved to Whitehall, Michigan, and that was kind of neat because that was a unique lifestyle for me because my dad was always gone. He was working because in a small town like that, there was no jobs. Right. So you got to remember, I went from living in a big town to Hispanic culture to little Whitehall, Michigan, and
that had to be a culture shock.
It was a huge culture shock to me,
right.
But I loved it because again, I would go every single day. I would go down to White Lake and we'd go fishing. I did just by myself.
It's a beautiful area.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I think it's still very underknown compared to what I think it could be someday, that area.
Yeah.
And I'd just go down there and I'd go fishing every single day. But then, due to just things, my dad ended up having an affair on my mom. Mm. And he ended up leaving the family because she was going to buy him a restaurant, his new wife. And my dad's heart's always been kind of like he's passed away now, was always in the restaurant business. His heart, he's always wanted to achieve success in the restaurant business, which is a brutal world.
Yeah. I can't imagine owning a restaurant.
No.
Like I've always said, if I was going to open and I've opened businesses, but restaurant would not be one of them that I would ever consider.
No, I mean, it's definitely a rough life. So my dad ended up opening a restaurant called Bono's, and it was on Plainfield and Leonard in downtown Grand Rapids. So my mom was left alone in Whitehall. So he didn't want anything to do with us. Mm-hmm. So I was raised by a single mom. And she ended up having some mental issues due to how much he abused her. So he ended up, she ended up doing is going either bulimic or anorexic. One of them where she was losing so much weight, she'd only eat like a little piece of celery like this. She ended up going down to like 80, 90 pounds. She was almost nothing. And our family came to visit us. And they were like, hey, you're moving back with us. So they moved us back to this area. Well, for me, it was very much like I was just didn't know what was going on. So I just kind of lived my life kind of as a loner a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then I started getting picked on a lot because being raised by a single mom, and that's why I have a lot of respect for single moms out there, because being raised by a single mom, there's no extra money or time in your life. You're working multiple jobs. You're doing a lot of crazy and wild things. So I got beat up and picked on a lot in 7th grade.
And that was here in the Jenison, Hudsonville area. You went to Jenison?
I went to Pinewood Elementary.
Okay.
And I got picked on a lot because at that time, everybody was wearing like Tommy Hilfiger sandals, and my mom pulled up in this Ford Escort blowing smoke out the back. For real. I was embarrassed by being dropped off by her. Yeah. So one of the things that it was for me was... So then I would just, in 7th grade, I would hang out in the basement. My sister was 1 year older than me. Okay. And she'd have these people come over, and she started kind of gaining some momentum in high school. And I was younger by a year. She started having them, and they would come over and be like, what are you doing in the basement? Are you a loser? Like, sitting down here by yourself? So I started to get sick of that. Mm-hmm. So then I started to trying to work my way up in that type of world, the bad kid world, right? So I started hanging out with older people, and it got to a point where I kind of got this mentality of the worse that you were, the tougher you were, and less people would bother you. Mm. So that was my mentality for years. I worked up, to the point where, I got in trouble for stealing cars. I can't name how many times I've been arrested, right, as a young juvenile, right? But the whole time it was because I was just in protective mode. Right. Right? It's not something I desired for my life. It's not something I wanted. I remember praying at night, like, I don't want nothing to do with this life. Mm. Like, I don't want to do this, but it's just something I felt like I had to do just to survive. But
and your mom at that time, she was, and I know your mom now, she's a sweet
she's amazing.
Lady. She's awesome. But at that time, she was just so busy working and just
2-3 jobs at a time
that she really didn't know what was going on with you.
And I think she battled with depression herself because of that. Mm-hmm. So she chose not to see it because it was easier. When you're working 2 or 3 jobs, the last thing you want to do is come home and deal with these issues. You're just trying to sleep and maintain and survive. So, so that's what that was like for me as a young kid. But then, things got progressively worse for me until and then I was like, I'm done with this. So then I got kicked out of every school in the United States at 8th grade. First month
every school in the United States?
Yeah, for bringing a gun to school.
Oh, yeah. That would be, I knew you got kicked out of school, but not every school in the United States. But a gun would explain that. It wasn't for, like, I want to shoot up the school. It's just because of, just how things worked. So... Then I went to an alternative school. Yeah. And that me personally, I don't believe in alternative schools on any level. I think they're good for their own place, maybe for like moms that have babies in high school or something. Right. But I don't think you should bring a bunch of kids together that are trouble and plop them in one school together because it only causes more problems. Right. Yeah.
I know that there's going to be a lot of people probably, and this is where the real moral comes in, that will disagree because it's done a lot of good for them. But in my opinion, it was a disaster.
Too many bad kids that could get together and make even worse situations.
And I believe that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with.
Right.
So if the 5 people you're hanging out with are people that also got kicked out of school, things are not a good thing at all. Right. It's an awful thing to do. So I didn't make it there. Mm-hmm. Because if I could leave and they weren't forcing me to be there and I could walk out, I did.
You just
I would go to school for an hour a day max, and I would be like, I'm out of here. I got better things to do, right? Mm-hmm. So I would leave. But a camp counselor one day when I was in there pulled me aside, and she's like, hey, I want you to watch this video, and I want you just to check it out. Mm-hmm. So she put me in because I was not surviving there. There's no way I was graduating. There was no way I was doing anything there. So she puts this video of boot camp, and I didn't even question it. I was looking for discipline. I was looking for structure. I wasn't looking for the easy way out. I wasn't looking for anything that most people are looking for. I was looking to change. I just needed the tools. I needed somebody to invest in me, and this is what it was. And I didn't need it to be easy.
Right.
So I signed up for military school, and how they were doing it at that time is if you were closer to 18, you were more likely to get in. So once it filled, they denied me. And I was frustrated with that because it was something where I was ready to change and they denied me going in. So at that time, I was questioning a lot about life. I was like, why are you denying me of going? Like, why? Like, I couldn't figure out why things were happening the way they were. Mm-hmm. So during that 6 months that I could reapply, I ended up meeting my wife now. She just showed up to my house because my house was a party house. My mom worked, right? So the likeliness of me having 50 to 100 people in my house in and out a day was a normal thing. People can't wrap their head around that, but that was a normal life for me.
Party house.
Without a doubt. It wasn't it was like, not like, oh, your mom's gone. It was like, no, every day, all day. Like, it was rough, right? Yeah. But then she showed up, right, with some girls, and I was like, oh, I met her and we established a really close relationship very quickly. Okay. So then when I went off to boot camp, so I ended up signing up for boot camp. I left for 6 months, and that built our relationship so strong because when you're that young, I think we were 16, 17 years old, when you're that young, and you leave for somebody for 6 months to really hold together, and we did, and our relationship grew stronger than ever through letters.
Okay. It was just letters that you were communicating.
I was able to call her once a week for 5 minutes.
Okay.
But that's it.
Okay.
So we wrote letters all the time, every day, back and forth, and so it was kind of cool. Like, it's kind of funny to see that. So we wrote letters and we developed that relationship. And when I got out, to be honest with you, I didn't look back. I never went back to that life, that mentality. There was nothing about that life that I went back to on any level.
Okay.
I got out. I surrounded my life around her and 100% her, and trying to develop just be a man and really go into the world. So I was, even though I lived a rough life, I was done. By the time I was 18, I was ready to really be successful and do something.
That's awesome. Now tell me about when you and Erin started dating. Like, her parents had to know that you were a bad kid.
Absolutely.
So tell me about that.
Her mom, if you ask her mom to this day, she was terrified. Because when we were dating, I mean, to be honest with you, I would come in, and a lot of time I was on drugs.
Right.
And I'd show up to her house, and her mom would be bawling. I mean, you have a 16-year-old kid that is in their backyard smoking cigarettes and showing up high and doing all these things, but her parents let her make the decisions. Let her make her decisions and just kind of guided her and teached her. But Erin always believed in me, which was a pretty cool thing, that she was always like, hey, I see something in him. She seen something in me that I didn't see in myself. But what was interesting about that was that after the fact, most of my friends that I talked to today said that I was different in that aspect. Mm-hmm. They were like, there was something that you weren't like all of us. Even though I was the one that was leading most of the garbage and doing it, they go, they all sensed the same thing that I felt. And that was I don't want to do any of this garbage. Mm-hmm. But I really people think you have a choice. That's why I'm a firm believer of people are a product of their environment. Mm-hmm. So you got to, if you have a chance to switch your environment, to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a couple other cases throughout my life, like even when we got my mom kicked out of so many houses, there was another time, like kind of like the Whitehall time, but there was another time where I was rough, and we moved out to the country on 72nd in Port Shelton, and it was pretty country back then, and I didn't have a ride, and I started to change my life for a small period of time because it was just living in the country, right? And I embraced it, every minute of it. I just go fishing at the pond. I just like hung out there and really didn't get into trouble. But then the people we were renting from, we were renting the basement from, some heroin addicts moved in with them because it was their granddaughter. So then I didn't get into heroin, but it was one of those things where they started giving me drugs, and so we moved out of there pretty quickly. So it's because I think part of it was I've always loved people, and heroin addict or not, I've always wanted to, and I've always enjoyed the company of people and loving people and caring from where they're at. That also could get you into trouble, right?
Right. So when you got back from military school,
yeah,
and you got back with Erin, you never really left her,
no.
But when you were together again, when did her parents notice the change in you? Like right away, or they were still apprehensive? What happened?
I think pretty much right when I got at boot camp, they knew that I was serious and I was ready.
Yeah.
I don't think change happens. It can, but most of the time, change doesn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. So I think that the nice thing was I've had to develop and work through in a period of time, and that's always been me. I think some people can change right away. For me, my journey has always been a development over time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was as soon as I got out of boot camp, I wanted a job, so I started searching out, and that's where I ended up landing in manufacturing. And yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. We'll get into your job part later, but all that experience that you had as a young child, and then now you're a family man, married, and have 3 beautiful children. How does that experience that you had then affect how you are a husband and a father now?
One of the things that I live by is I believe everything actually happens for a perfectly balanced reason. I think people do make their choices in life. I think there is a lot of choices that people make, but I think that it makes me stronger. I don't look back. I don't have any of this stuff in my head where I even towards my dad, I don't towards my mom. I feel very optimistic, believe it or not, and great towards them. I'm thankful I didn't have an easy life. Mm-hmm. So, but I do notice that I see in the world today that has affected me is I see a lot of entitlement in the world. Mm-hmm. I know that I'm entitled, but I also know that we all are a little bit. And I know as soon as I start to feel like my life was hard, or there's always somebody that has it worse than me. Mm-hmm. And there's little things that I notice, like for example, and to this day I notice for myself is, and most people won't understand what I'm saying, is I notice that people that have fathers in their lives typically are into sports. They're typically into certain things. They will gravitate towards guys that also had fathers. Mm-hmm. So they all click. I'll notice in a crowd, you'll notice they'll click. I never really had a great male influence in my life until I got older. Until, honestly, the first one to really step up the first male influence was Steve. Mm-hmm. Because it was really nobody. I never really talked to men because men wouldn't have conversations. They wouldn't do these things. So I really didn't have a strong male influence until I got into my 20s. Mm-hmm. And that was what really interesting because so I think that's when we like to judge people for because they're like, well, why don't you make decisions that I did? It's like, well, you also don't have the mentality When you have a bad day, you can go home and bounce something off your mom and dad, or you can turn around and there's certain aspects of comfort that you have compared to people that don't have anything. And at least I had a mom back at home that I could talk to. Mm-hmm. So there's people that don't even have that. And I had buddies that didn't have moms or dads. They passed away. So I'm grateful for that when it comes to my kids. But now I try to organically get that to my kids, where it's like, okay, how do you guys understand different perspectives from people? And that's why I'm a firm believer of mission trips. Mm-hmm. I think you can, I don't want to call it false, but you could get a glimpse of that when you go over, and that's why we have a lot of friends in like Guatemala and Haiti and things like that, because you get a glimpse of like
what a different life.
Something as simple as water.
Yeah.
It sounds stupid, but it's like, oh, yeah, they were noticing education in Haiti. They were struggling with these kids learning in Haiti. Yeah. And as simple as giving them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, mm-hmm. and their mentality and their mindset, how they would sit down and actually learn, was so substantially different, mm-hmm. that it was just due to nutrients in their body. You can't make up that entitlement. I can't even as a kid. At least, I mean, we did struggle having food.
Right.
But that's a totally different level.
Yeah.
So when you say,
when
why
don't have food for days or weeks.
Weeks, and I mean, and so you look at that stuff and say, okay, we all are entitled, and the problem is when you don't recognize it.
Right.
I think if we all recognize that we all are entitled on some level, mm-hmm. then you start to open your eyes to other things, and understand you can put yourself in other people's shoes, but. Yeah. So that's what makes that's why I think I am a good father. I don't relate to my kids on a lot of things, like when it comes to sports and things like that. But when it comes to teaching and educating, when it comes to the business side and how things work, how people work, I think my kids, I believe, are pretty advanced in that, because I can talk them through a lot of those things. Yeah. So, but I'm a communicator. Yeah. That's what I am. I being raised by women, I think I'm a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Like I think about even yours and me and your relationship. I'm a communicator. I have no problem talking, vocalizing what I think, what I feel. Mm-hmm. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. And I think some of those things are okay to be that. I think I show that as a man. I show what a real man is. We like to think it's just sports, or we might like to think but I think it comes down to being true, real, organic, talking to people, saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling, not with an emotional, whiny side of it, because I'm not that person at all. Mm-hmm. I'm very direct, bold. I can talk through something. Mm-hmm. I think I got that from like learning how to talk to women and living with women my whole life.
Right.
For sure.
So tell us how, when we met, you guys were a young married couple.
Yeah.
And you had little Rennie. He was just a baby. I remember that. And you had a house that you wanted to sell, and that's how we met each other.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'll take a little bit back, a little further, is when I was 18, I got into manufacturing.
Okay. Yeah, let's start there.
Because that'll tell kind of the story of where my mentality was.
Yeah.
When I was 18, I got out of boot camp, and I just wanted to be successful. Mm-hmm. So the opportunity was there. I worked at Royal, and actually, if you didn't have a diploma, they wouldn't hire you, but somehow I got in there. Mm. So I ended up working.
Did you have a GED or just because
I had a GED.
Okay, so that would
that could have been the reason. Yeah. So when I got into manufacturing, my mindset is I don't care if these people torture me. I'm going to be successful here. I don't care what they do to me. I don't know how they do it. I don't care what I got to do. I'm going to achieve this. So I worked towards that. And so when I was there, it ended up, I gave everything, didn't take vacations. And then one of my bosses said, I think you need to take a vacation. Because I think I was so wound up, really tight. And when I got out, when I came back, he's like, I just noticed such a difference in you. So that's why I do see a lot of value in taking vacations and relaxing. I think that you only live one life. Mm-hmm. We vacation quite a bit, me and my family. You need that time to relax, but then when you're back, grind with everything you got, right? Mm-hmm. But when I worked at Royal, I did well. I was actually at one point the youngest supervisor in the company. Okay. And doing really well, but struggling because I couldn't get this mentality of anything I did, I would do it for them. But then 2008, 2009 hit, and I realized that job security wasn't what we thought it was, even in manufacturing. Mm-hmm. I think people sat there and think, oh yeah, job security is working at a job that pays you 40 hours a week, which I think there is some security to that. But when you hit a recession and manufacturing goes down and gets cut in half, you see a lot of people you love that have families and stuff, they're let go.
Right.
And they lose their homes.
Mm-hmm.
So God put it on my heart that I had to sell my house and live off of McDonald's wages. And that's that heavy because we had a beautiful first home. I mean, I worked hard for that. Mm-hmm. And so we sold it. We asked around, and I got introduced to you guys. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go work at McDonald's. I don't know where I'm going to live. I didn't have a clue where I was going to live. Mm-hmm. But I just knew that that's what I had to do. Yeah. So even to this day, the standard of that house, so like I look back, I'm like, that was still a sweet house. Like, so we had a nice family, white picket fence, literally the whole deal, right? And didn't know where. So you guys sold that house for us, and Steve started showing us around these houses that we could afford, and it wasn't just lining up to what we wanted. Mm-hmm. And we're like, this is just, it's not going to work for us. So then her grandpa at that exact time ended up going into a nursing home. So we thought, hey, we could just stay there instead of just staying in a campground. We could stay there for a month. And as we started to look at houses and figure out what we're going to do and just save money. So we ended up staying there, but it ended up being almost a year we ended up staying there. And then you guys ended up finding her parents, their dream home. So we were able to get in there and work out the numbers where we can work in there. And
that was a nice house too. You bought that house. Yep.
Yeah. So that's how that kind of worked out was, you think about all the dreams that were crushed for me. And I think back about not getting into boot camp when I wanted, not having my dad around, but it worked out perfectly because if I would have got in at the time,
you wouldn't have met
I would have met Aaron. If I wouldn't have sold my house and thought about like just, hey, I'm going to live off of McDonald's wages, I would have never gotten into real estate today.
Right.
So meeting you guys is what got me here and where I'm at today, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Where it's more than I would have ever expected.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So you got into real estate, and I remember that first couple of years that you were working with us, and we went to the same church at the time.
Yep.
And I remember you were like, we're teaching you how to sell real estate and telling you all these things to do, and you were always frustrated. Tell me why you were frustrated.
Yeah, that was the hard thing, right? So it's you start to. This is one of the things I learned was not blaming other people. Yeah. And one of the things that was really hard for me was everywhere I would go, I'm trying to get in real estate, so I'm networking. You're going to B&Is. You're doing all this, whatever you can do to be great, right? And just meeting people. And everywhere I would go, I would hear Steve Frody's name everywhere. And I remember coming home and talking to Aaron. I'm like, this is crap because I'm out here putting in the work. Steve's not there, and he's still in spirit, essentially, there because of the relationships he had with people. So I actually questioned leaving for a minute. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is like, I need to fly the coop, essentially, right? Like, I need to go somewhere else because everywhere I go, I'm hearing Steve Frody's name. But then something clicked in my head where it was like, no, this world is a world of abundance, not scarcity. Mm-hmm. And there's so much work out there. It's just unbelievable. Even in down markets, up markets, people want to sit there and say, but it's all about your mindset and what you have. And I chose to take the mindset of, I want everybody to go up to Steve and say, hey, I met Rennie. I'm around Rennie. I seen Rennie. And I was going to own that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to use the excuse and blame Steve. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to take this and I'm going to run with it, and I'm going to punch this thing in the face, right? And that's what I did. Mm-hmm. I chose to go out there and build stronger relationships, and it took work.
It did.
You have to go out with having coffees, building relationships, being strong. But that's when I developed my best people skills, because I started realizing it's really about people.
Yeah.
If you don't, people every single day, real estate agents like, oh, I can't buy and sell houses, or I can't, whatever it is that they're trying to do. And I'm like, you're not building relationships then. If you choose to focus in on the relationship 100%, money and the deals will come because people do things, right? Like every one of the houses you see out there in my mind, I'm like, let's say I know 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever it is, people. If I build close relationships with them and 10% of them sell houses, I'm going to close deals. So to me, it was like, it's not about making money. And then it's about building relationships so tight that, and it didn't take too long where Steve started coming up to me. And this is serious. This is no joke. Steve was coming up to me later and saying, oh, I heard you were mentioning you. Heard this person met you. I heard that person met you. And he started hearing my name everywhere. And that's when I noticed my real estate career really changed. And I went from making, I'm talking, it changed by 10 times.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
my income went from tenfold. Like, and you're like, your income went tenfold. I'm like, literally, it went tenfold. I went from making almost nothing, some, but to 10 times that business that I was doing.
Was that the year that we started City to Shore?
Nope, it was about a year and a half, 2 years in.
Okay, so we were still at the other company when that happened.
No.
Oh, it was after.
It was after.
Okay, because we were at a different company.
Yep.
You worked with us there, followed us to City to Shore, and then it was like a year and a half after that. Okay.
Yep. So it was something in my...
Were you full-time when you...
Well, that's the kicker.
That was the other thing.
I was
because
not
you were
full-time. Yeah. And I think that is the attitude where it's a scary thing when you have kids at home.
Yes.
You have kids at home, you have a wife, you have all this stuff that you're providing for, and I'll just be honest. I think I made like $20,000 my first year in real estate, maybe 25 the second year in real estate.
And you probably spent like $5,000 or $6,000.
Yeah.
Just be in real estate.
So I mean, actually bringing it in to where I think that first year I made like after that, like $150,000 or something crazy like that. Yeah. And what really changed for me was going full time, but that was a risk. But here's the interesting part, and this is for everybody that has spouses that you want to take this big jump in anything. For 2 years, I asked my wife, I want to quit. And it never felt right. But then something just clicked like she understood and she could see it in me that my whole mindset shifted. And it wasn't a doubt in her mind that she's like, you have to quit. So then I quit real estate, or I quit working in manufacturing, and then because I was so busy. And then within 6 months, she had to quit because she worked. She was working two days a week, 3 days a week in manufacturing. She even quit because I needed a full time. I needed her full time, just kind of supporting the back end stuff for me.
Yeah.
So it was that. I can see why certain people, you see them and you're like, why did they get where they're at? And it's because they took some bold leaps of faith that are like crazy. Like they didn't know how or why something was going to happen, but they know that they were called to do it. They see the vision and they do it.
And that's can be with anything in life.
And I still do it.
Yeah.
I'm almost addicted to it now.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I am not saying it's right or wrong. So I know that I have my own opinions when people say, oh, yeah, you got to be very careful with what you do. I'm very much like a bold, take huge risk person. I don't think we're called to live life very comfortably in boxes because that's what we're told. At the beginning, when I worked at Royal in manufacturing, I was very much like that. I almost had my, all my stuff. Every year I maxed out my IRAs. I paid extra towards my house. I did all these things. Like in most people's eyes, you were probably the smartest person with money back then. And now I'm more like, I would still double down on anything that I'm doing, especially when it comes to myself. If it's like, oh, Rennie, you want to spend money on coaching or you want to spend money on any of it, I'm going to double down every single time on myself because I know me and my wife talk about it all the time. We have a beautiful house now. We have all these things, but I'm okay with living in the middle of nowhere in the smallest house and having almost nothing. But I know that I can make things happen because of what I've learned over the years. And if I continue to do that, I can drop in anywhere and be successful because I choose to. And with the things that I've learned and
Right.
through the hardships. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's doing what you know needs to be done
Yeah, definitely.
and not holding back.
100%.
So, yeah. So I remember when you were at the point you were making good money in real estate. I think we were a few years into doing the slip and slide, and I think we were there one time
Oh, yeah.
at the slipping slide, and we were for those of you that don't know, we did this huge community event every year called the Saturday Slip and Slide.
Had like 10,000 people come out.
10,000 people came to it in our community, and it's still happening now. We just don't do it. Our church has taken
handed it off.
We handed it off to somebody else to do it and to benefit from it, but a ministry to benefit from it. So, but we were at this event, and all the community was there. And I remember you and I having a conversation in the parking lot, and you were so mad.
Yeah.
Tell me about that conversation. What happened at that point in time?
Again, another life lesson. So I'm sitting there at the slip and slide, and there's a bunch of police officers at the time that were standing around, and they made a comment to me that I was always going to be a loser in their eyes. And I would never change. And this is after I changed my life for the last 10 years. And I went up to Shelly, and I'm like, I'm just so upset because, you grow mentally where that stuff doesn't bother you at all anymore. Anybody
Right.
could say anything about me now, and it wouldn't affect me on any level.
But you were still at a point where that
It
would
affected
be
me. That was the I don't want to tell my story section. I don't want
Yeah.
people to even know about my past section.
Yeah.
And they and how they treated me was like I would never change. And you realize that no matter what you do in life, you're always going to have haters. But then you got people like you that have no problem going up to those people and having my back. And I think that's where you realize that the most important thing you can have in life is people that care about you, that have your back, and that are in your circle. And there's going to always be haters. You just need to know that the people that know and care about you are in your corner. And those people will always be there, and they will stick up for you, and they'll have your back no matter what. So to me, that's a big deal. I still live by that 100%. And I tell people that all the time in my church is like, my people are my people. And I stay really close to them. I care about them with everything I got. And I want to live life like, even if somebody did tell them the worst thing in the world, came up to you and told you the worst thing in the world about me, it wouldn't affect your opinion on me on any level because you know who I am to the core. Just because they believe something
right.
doesn't mean necessarily it's true or what you believe. And I think that's how you live your life. And I know that that's where life is when you turn around and you say, hey, I think we're so worried about what other people think. And I just choose not to live in that anymore.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are some of the things that you're working on now, currently? What is Rennie Barton doing now?
Yeah, so my biggest thing is I'm always trying to develop myself. It's one of those things where now my biggest focus is caring about people, spending a lot of time with my people at church, making sure I care for them, be with them, grow with them. My heart overall, if I had to break it down to one sentence, it's developing other people to be great, right? It's understanding, hey, just because crap happens in life, if you're willing to change and you want it, then you can make it happen, and you just need your people. And that some people don't have their people, and I want to be those people that are like, hey, I'm ready to take that leap. I'm ready to go. All right, let's do some stuff. Right. And for me, it's and spending a lot of time developing my kids. I mean, I don't have much more years with them, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's focusing in on making sure that my kids are strong people that even if they want to follow me or whatever their chosen path is and what they want to do, that they're strong mentally in everything they do. And I'm seeing that with my kids. Yeah. I think my kids are really strong, not weak people, but I also don't coddle them on any direction whatsoever. Yeah. I don't know if that answers it, what you're looking for.
That's great. What are your plans for the future? What would you like to see in your future?
Honestly, my plan is to keep developing the people around me to where I would love to see us grow. What I mean by us is just my people. And whoever that they choose to be, want to be in my world and me be in their world, but that live on a high level, and that I think that's kind of what this podcast to me, this podcast is getting where my head's at, what I've been through, and what me and you have been through, and when it comes to business and changing people's lives right through that. And I'm really excited to see what comes of that, to where they're like, okay, wait a minute, this kid didn't graduate high school. This kid was raised by a single mom. This kid didn't have a dad. He didn't have these things, but he's doing this thing, and it works. And he kind of had this specific attitude of no bull crap. Let's just get it done, and let's shoot for the stars. Let's make things happen. That's my vision for the future, is keep building people.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for our listeners?
I would say the biggest advice I would say for you guys is to keep learning from people that have actually done things or been through things in life. I think you're going to find that there's a lot of people out there in the world, and we all know that necessarily don't speak truth, or you might see them. They might pull up in a Lamborghini and have a beautiful house. Doesn't mean they've been through it. They could have inherited it. There could be a lot of reasons that they're where they're at. Doesn't mean that they've gone through some stuff. I think for me, it's like listening, reading a lot of books. It's finding the people that you want to follow. And that's why, to me, I think I'm here today, is because of some of the books and some of the leadership things that I've listened to, and the people that I'm following, the people that are coaching me. It's finding the right people, finding your circle, watching who pours into you. The best advice I would say is I kind of think of yourself as an orange, and when you squeeze an orange, lemon juice doesn't come out, grape juice doesn't come out, orange juice comes out. So the music you listen to, the TV shows you watch, what you put into your body, everything is when somebody makes you mad and squeezes you is what's going to come out. So definitely focus in on what you're putting in you, mentally, physically, everything, because that's what's going to come out when you get squeezed and life really starts to happen and take you, because we can't control life. We could there could be so many bad things that happen. There could be good things. I mean, we could go to war tomorrow, right? We could lose everything we have. We could. Yeah. And is that going to change what comes out in Rennie? No, Rennie's a strong leader. He's a powerful person. He's going to own the situation that he's in, and he's going to champion his people through no matter what they're going through. And that's who Rennie is. So I think anybody can do that. I think Shelley Frody's the same way. It doesn't matter if you're selling real estate, you're selling franchises, or you're selling popsicles, you're selling oranges. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to push forward to greatness because that's what you want for your people that are around you and the people that you love and care for, right?
Absolutely.
That's the advice that I would give.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, this has been so much fun to hear your story and have you not turn beet red.
Yeah. Right.
Because I remember when that would happen.
Yeah.
And it's been fun to walk down memory lane again.
Yeah. It's crazy, right? It's just crazy where life takes you, the twists and turns. I'm excited to see what the next 20 years brings. Yeah. You know, I think about even like everything, like what the next 20 years life is. I want it to change. I don't want it to be different. I think there's certain sayings that people say is, oh, you've changed. I hope I change. I hope I'm not that same person in 20 years that I am today. I'm hoping I'm bigger, better, sharper, you know. Yeah. So I'm excited to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we have this tradition that we're starting on the Shoreline Show, and it's a message in the bottle. And so what I need you to do, Rennie, is grab this little folder here of paper, grab a piece of paper out of there, and write down a message or a statement or a question that will be for our next guest. And actually, I'm going to be the next guest. So you can't show it to me.
All right.
And then you have to put it in the bottle.
So it has to be real, right? Or make it to where, all right, this is good. All right.